This is where I live. This is the village of La Fouille, and a small village has its own recycling setup, which is quite normal for France. But here it has a particular significance and history. And the words on the wall. This is my local mairie. This is the council. These are the people that have asked me to do something with the wall. Remember the wall I mentioned last week? Every culture, every group of people will have its own ideas of how death should be represented. And it's a common feature, certainly in European mythology and religions, of death being represented by the old man in black, ambling around or riding around on a big black horse, or pulling a chariot, or even pushing a wheelbarrow with a scythe. Well, this place is no different. And because I'm interested in myth and depicting myth, because they are our foundational stories, and as I said before, I think I've figured out that's what art essentially is: storytelling in all its forms. This village that I live in has a bit of a reputation. Where should we go to? Where should I start from? Where should I start? Hang on, let's get back to the myth. Yes, the myth. So, the old Breton myths of the Grim Reaper equivalent. And here, the old man in black walking around, sorting out the souls, or collecting the souls, was called Ankou. I first heard of this character talking to neighbours, and they'd say that up on the hills, that's how they can remember their parents always trying to frighten them, or their grandparents trying to frighten them when they were young, saying, "Don't go up on the hill, it's dangerous, Ankou's up there." And there were various bogeymen that were invented in that sense of, like, let's keep our kids under control, let's scare them. But when I was doing my various pasted up characters of Celtic inspired horned individuals, which comes back from my interest in the feisty Minotaur women that I started doing when I was in the UK all those years ago. We grow up with myth, you see, it informs us, it inspires us. So because I was doing these new kind of loosely Breton inspired characters being pasted up here, there and everywhere, I got to hear these other mythological characters, these other gods, goddesses, and just ideas of the history of here, and I discovered Ankou. So, looking into him, I found out he also drove a cart. He also had a wheelbarrow to collect souls. He could arrive in a stage coach with 4 black horses. So basically, depending on what was considered, he would fit in. So Ankou would fit into whatever you'd consider terrifying. So probably, if you were wealthy and you had a coach and horses tucked up downstairs under the house, if you want to scare the kids at night, then you tell them about the skeletal old man in a long black coat and black hat walking around with a wheelbarrow collecting souls. If you're on the other side of the social scale and your mother or father have got a wheelbarrow outside, but you live in permanent worry and fear of whatever choices the rich are going to make that impact your life, then probably the stagecoach and horses and the sound of that arriving are probably more of a threat. to your kids sleeping sound. All these different forms, depending on your background. So, every part of the society has its idea of what scares it the most, and pictures it accordingly. So I finished the first big drawing based on this idea. General, just a sort of a lone character with a cart and a scrawny horse up on top of the hill. And a neighbour saw it in the studio and said, is that a pillow air? And I said, what? What's a pillow air? So they explained to me, a pillow air. That was another interesting avenue of discovery. Essentially, a pillow air is or was, a rag and bone, otherwise called in France a chiffonnier. So, it was the industry of rag and bone. That industry that was still happening, but it was in its death throes when I was a kid. But for my parents' generation, it was still a thing, and it's the same here. But here they were called pillow airs. And the pillow air, the industry of the pillow air, was a thing of importance, specifically for here. So there you are, La Fouillée, place of the pillow air. Now this was a big industry. Yeah, so the pillow airs, the lonely figure walking over the hills, or from the hill, going out far and wide, and they did. They would travel they would travel to the city that's near us, Morlaix, a port city, and it also had a tobacco industry there, so it had money. Where there's people making money, there's people throwing stuff away. So they would collect rags, collect bone, rag and bone. And the rags were for the paper industry, which was also well known around this part of the world. Obviously they had the water, but they also had the water that would power the mills, and paper was a big industry. So they were going around and they would exchange whatever was financially beneficial to them. Exchange. Sometimes it was pots, little pots, bowls, plates made in the ceramics factories of Quimper, and again that was a wealthy area. So they would meet all these people, all these different lifestyles and differences of language, and there's old stories of them, histories of them, written locally, that basically explain that despite them being the frequent target of some ill will, much like the trade in the UK, I suppose, it's easy to point fingers and lay blame on passing itinerant poor people. But there was the romance that was attached to it as well, usually by people who didn't do it. You know, of the travelling far and wide, meeting new people, taking on and spreading of news and ideas, the mystery of a stranger just arriving, where you could hand over stuff you didn't want and perhaps get some goodies you did. But because the farming was so poor, or because the land was so poor in terms of what it would deliver farm-wise, essentially from the autumn over the winter, it was a kind of life-saving income generator for many in this area, and particularly in this village. And I think they got kind of lumped in with the myth of the Yanku, you know, a bogeyman. Frighten your kids with. If your kids are playing up, do as you're told, or he'll come and he'll take you away. I think that's where I think that's possibly another reason why they get a bad press. I did read that in this village, again in an old document, they described that perhaps 3/4 of the people were doing this over the winter time. You know, that's how necessary it was. So that's the plan. That's the stories. So there was a council meeting. We talked about all the choices they had, and there were various ideas of what they thought they wanted, what they like, and I mentioned the pillow air, and I think it was a case of that cultural static where something that seems so obvious is not considered because you don't think it's special, because it's part of the everyday story. You know, there are people alive, there are families here that grew up on the pillowware tradition, you know, so it was such an intrinsic part of the culture here that the actual roots that a pillowware would have, their agreed patches, were passed on to their children. You know, it was inherited. You know, that's how intrinsic it was to the working culture of this area. Anyway, yep, they liked the idea. The council liked the idea. So that was simple. Did some small preliminary sketches, and then a decision was made as to what would be within the final composition, and I came up with a finished drawing, and that is what is planned for the wall. So I will be doing that soon. I've ordered my paints, I've ordered some colour, and we all know what the colour is going to be, don't we? Autumn. So when that arrives, I shall be out there with my ladder and my charcoal and my paint and my aerosols and my brushes and my paper to glue on the wall. We'll mix it all up. So, here's the drawing. So here's the agreed plan for the drawing. The couple are actually from a postcard that I found when I was doing the research. On the postcard, they're identified as being pillowwares from La Fouillée. I haven't had them identified to me yet. If anybody can identify them, we shall wait and see. I'm sure when it's on the wall and more people are aware of what I'm doing, we'll probably have them named. That'll be nice. So that's where it's at. This is the wall, and we're drawing a pillowware with reference to its relevance, not only for this village, but also for its increasing relevance now. This is why it all comes back to, you see, pillowwares like the rag and bone men, because they were poor and itinerant, they were often the subject of community abuse and fear and accusation. So if something goes missing, blame the rag and bone man. But anyway, we're back to recycling. Whereas now, for the younger generation, recycling is normal, and the people that do it, it's a respectable enough normal job. The council will give it names like environmental services not rag and bone, which is good. It should be valued, it should be appreciated, and it should be far more intensive than it already is. We throw away too much shit. See, one of the plans today was to go up on the hill and show you how far the pillow airs would travel. But as you can see, you can't even see the hill. Or I'll show you the view from the hill some other day. So there you are. That's the process of where the ideas come from and how ideas feed other ideas and start turning out new ideas. You can do this. Talk to the old farts around you. Go and have a chat with them. Find out what histories they've got. Talk to your older relatives. Sit them down. Ask them about rag and bone men. Can they remember a rag and bone man? So, ask around, find the histories. Like I said before, if drawing and painting ain't your thing, write about them. Or do this, talk about them. Save all these stories, save all these histories. Because otherwise the histories get written in a fashion that benefits those that always benefit. Look how popular Downton Abbey was. It's only a story, but there are people that look on that as being a fiction based upon a real history. Yes, we know it's not an actual family, but this is how things were then. And you think, when you watch it, really? Anyway, I think we're done. I'll find something else to talk about next week. Don't know what. What should we talk about next week, dog? Dog don't care. As long as I'm out for a walk, dog's happy. Like I said, happy dog, happy human. Right. Look after yourselves. Look after those around you. And as ever, from the grown man walking around with a phone on a stick, ta-ta for now.